While I'm still having trouble accomplishing the things that I want to do in life, I did at least recently finish witnessing two pieces of media that I've been working on literally for years. One was Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. It's a novel that's over 1,000 pages long. It's been called a contender for the title of the Great American Novel, and it was written by a guy who had a complicated relationship with the concept of entertainment, so he went out and made a piece of entertainment that forces the audience to actively participate instead of letting it pass them by. I finally finished reading it on Christmas Day after working on it for more than 2 years. The other was EverymanHYBRID, a cult classic YouTube horror series that spread out on other forms of social media and worked audience participation into several key plot points. Its final episode was finally released at the stroke of midnight Eastern Time on New Year's Day, after sporadically stretching out for the better part of a decade. Did I enjoy them? Well, that's the thing. I was astounded by how both of these things made me feel the exact same way. I felt ashamed about not feeling ashamed about how I didn't understand a fair amount of what was going on in these two things. I would say that I got most of what was going on, I got the gist of them, but evidently there were some major plot points that I just didn't see, and as much as some people won't like me saying this, I don't think that makes me stupid. That's just how complex these two things were. Let me put it this way, after finishing both, I was left with a vague feeling of, what the fuck just happened? So I went and looked it up, and I was met with a bunch of other people with the same questions, and there were people offering answers kindly, and others saying, if you didn't get what was going on, you're either lazy or stupid. But surely we can't all be lazy and stupid now, can we be? And I could try to make my own excuses for why I didn't get stuff. With Infinite Jest, to call its structure and writing style experimental would be one hell of an understatement, so getting any sort of momentum when reading the thing was a rare occurrence. It wasn't all like that, but I was going slower in the slow parts than I was going faster in the fast parts, and there were a lot more slow parts. That's why it took me 2 years to read it. That, and I've just always been a slow reader. Teachers in elementary school did not know what to do with me. Do you remember in grade school when they would divide us up into reading groups that were clearly the smart kids and the average kids and the dumb kids? Well, my third grade teacher, she did not know how to reconcile my reading speed with my test scores. She was just like, fuck it then. You don't get to be in a reading group. You read your own book at your own pace and you present on it all by yourself. And so they all read their other books without me, and I never did get to find out what happened in the last Super Fudge book. Meanwhile, with EverymanHYBRID, the slow pace was conclusively not my fault. I could only progress when they uploaded a new installment, and even then some of the pertinent information was in places on the internet I would never know to look. And whereas Infinite Jest slowed me down because it made me do my homework to the point of exhaustion, EverymanHYBRID was slowed down by other members of the audience not doing their homework. At one point the show was on hiatus for a year because one of the many fans who volunteered to be part of the mythos, this guy just disappeared. He held a very key piece of information and he just fucked off. The entire show came to a grinding halt because of this one random dude. But all this just highlights another way that these two were both two sides of the same coin. I had trouble following them specifically because it took so long to get through them. And at a certain length of time, anybody would be liable to forget details, and that makes it harder to piece together new details. And when I looked into the answers for my questions and saw people recalling obscure details and complicated conclusions like it was nothing, it made me wonder, do these people just have amazing memory, or are they taking even more of their own time to refresh their own memories? Because I'm not sure how much it can be the first one, but in a world where having too much time on your hands is considered shameful, who would admit to doing the second one? Just another way these two confuse me. So did I enjoy them? Let me put it this way. I think I had to. I don't think I had a choice. By this point in the internet age, we all probably know some pop psychology that boils down to the brain making irrational decisions all the time. So add to that list the idea that if we have to bust our asses to make heads or tails of something that takes hours and hours and hours of our time, if it was anything better than decent, we're going to say we loved it because we don't want to feel like we've had our time wasted even a little bit. Now, don't think for a second I'm saying, oh, these things trick you into loving them and nobody can hate them, because of course you can find detractors for either of these. You can find plenty of people saying that either of these were needlessly complicated or pretentious or not too sure themselves entirely of what the hell they were doing. Of course, some would say that these points come from jaded professional reviewers, or people who didn't finish the whole thing and didn't give it a fair shot, or people who don't understand art. And such counter-arguments may or may not be fair based on who the detractor is. But there is one thing I am sure of. I have seen both of these get a lot more love than hate. That said, I'm sure some would argue over whether or not I'm even allowed to say I enjoyed either of these. I'm sure there are some gatekeepers out there who would tell me that I can't say I enjoyed them if I didn't get all of what was going on like they did. And some would probably say that I'm not standing up for myself if I say I loved a piece of art that mentally abused me. But again, I don't think I had a choice. Okay, here's a question. Logical feelings. Can such things exist? Because what are feelings but a weird mix of all of our responses from every experience we've had in our entire lives, and our evolutionary mechanisms that process all of our experiences and reference the similarity to shit that our primitive ancestors went through? Logical and emotional responses can certainly overlap, but they won't all the time. And it's not a new debate to pose the question of when we should put stock into logical reasoning, which we need to make sound decisions, and the feelings that make us human. Whether it's what to do in a moral dilemma, or whether choosing a political stance, or whether deciding whether or not words hurt. Like, if we only made logical decisions, would we even experience emotions? Should we not want to? I know I'm not the first person to pose this question, but has anybody been the first to give a satisfying answer? Let's say somebody actually watches this and straight up calls me a retard for not getting all the intricacies of Infinite Jest. I think that the logical decision here would to be just ignore them and not waste my time. But somebody else might come along and agree that not getting all the details doesn't make me retarded, but that the logical course of action would be for me to tell the naysayers so because of some moral onus of changing a mean person's mind or something. But if I ignore the commenter, some will think I'm smart while others think I'm a pussy, and their opinion of me will change accordingly. But if I do say something, some will think I'm standing my ground, while others will think I'm being insecure and foolish for feeding the trolls, and their opinions of me will change accordingly. And depending on whether I reply with, let's discuss this like gentlemen, or fuck you, get bent, people's opinions of me will change accordingly. And if somebody out there thinks that I handle everything correctly in this situation, but they don't like that I use the R word, even for a hypothetical person calling me that word, their opinion of me will change accordingly. And it's one of those unwritten rules of society that we tell ourselves we shouldn't care what other people think, even though we know that we should, at least sometimes. Indeed, it can be argued that if I had done a better job of getting important people to like me and want to work with me because they liked my work, then maybe I wouldn't have the time or motive or reason to make this video right now. Now would I? But tying this all together, opinions, which are basically just feelings about things, may or may not be logical, but they can still tangibly help or hurt you and your work. So if you can make a piece of media that's at least kind of good, and it has to be good because there's nothing keeping people from walking away, but if you can string them along with something good, keep stringing them along, keep them going, take them on a great journey. By the time you arrive at your final destination, the followers who remain will think it was the greatest journey they've ever been on, because they won't want to believe that they've walked all that way for anything less. And then congratulations, you've got a lasting legacy as somebody who made a great piece of art. In one sense of the word great, at least, if not the other. And from there, you can go anywhere.